Coming into the situation room right now from the Pentagon about Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's mysterious 2009 disappearance and how U.S. military leaders could be planning to address the lingering questions it's raising. This, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is reaching out to fellow veterans and soldiers, attempting to reassure them that the Defense Department will get to the bottom of what really happened. CNN is covering this story from every angle with the reporters and guests standing by. Let's go to the Pentagon. Our correspondent Barbara Starr has got some new information. Barbara?
Wolf, no one is exactly talking about punishment yet, but the Pentagon made clear today there will be an investigation.
The Army announced a comprehensive, coordinated review of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl's disappearance and captivity. CNN has learned the Army will also ask Bergdahl about reports he may have tried to escape but was recaptured. But they are not asking him anything just yet.
We obviously have not been interrogating Sergeant Bergdahl. He is recovering from 5 years of captivity with the Taliban.
Today, President Obama defended the decision to get Bergdahl back.
Regardless of the circumstances, whatever those circumstances may turn out to be, we still get an American soldier back if he's held in captivity. Period. Full stop. We don't condition that.
It comes as allegations continue to swirl that Bergdahl deserted his unit.
Bergdahl left his equipment and walked out on his platoon, and his oath to the United States, so he definitely isn't a hero. He definitely is a deserter.
Matthew Verkant served with Bergdahl. He is represented by a Republican strategist. The political controversy drove the nation's highest-ranking officer, General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to respond on his Facebook page, saying, "Like any American, he is innocent until proven guilty. Our Army's leaders will not look away from misconduct if it occurred." A 2012 Rolling Stone article detailed a seemingly disillusioned Bergdahl and a unit in trouble, saying, "From the start, everything seemed to go wrong." When a lieutenant was removed from duty, it was, quote, quickly followed by a collapse in unit morale and an almost complete breakdown of authority. But Bergdahl's former team leader insists allegations the men weren't doing their jobs correctly were not true.
I believe that was incredibly blown out of proportion, and there was no discipline issues in our platoon.
U.S. officials tell CNN during the time Bergdahl was in captivity, that 5-year period, there were, in fact, a couple of instances where they had intelligence indicating where he might be being held. But they did not stage a rescue mission because it was deemed too risky to Sergeant Bergdahl, that they felt that captors would kill him if the U.S. tried to rescue him. Wolf?
All right, Barbara, thank you. Up on Capitol Hill, there's growing outrage, actually from both sides of the aisle at the White House decision to make this controversial swap. Our senior Washington correspondent, Joe Johns, is joining us now. He's got more on what's going on. What's the latest there, Joe?
Well, this is just into CNN. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, is not holding back, clearly not happy about the administration's handling of the Bo Bergdahl situation in the prisoner exchange. Tony Blinken of the White House staff called to apologize for letting her know late about the exchange, but it's pretty clear Senator Feinstein is not satisfied with what the administration has said to her. She talked about this just a few minutes ago at the Capitol.
It comes with some surprise and dismay that the transfers went ahead with no consultation, totally not following the law, and in an issue of this kind of concern to a committee that bears the oversight responsibility, I think you can see that we're very dismayed about it.
And there has not been even the weakest case, in my opinion, made that he was suffering from a health standpoint to the degree to which a decision had to be made immediately.
You also saw Senator Saxby Chambliss, the top Republican on the Intelligence Committee. He's pretty steamed, too. He had some harsh words for the administration when I asked him about it earlier today. Senator, the White House says you all were kept in the loop on this. Were you?
The White House is wrong about that. I hadn't had a conversation with the White House on this issue in a year and a half. Now, if that's keeping us in the loop, then, you know, this administration is more arrogant than I thought they were.
Senator Chambliss wants the administration to declassify information about the 5 Taliban leaders who were released in exchange for Bo Bergdahl. Not everyone on the Hill, though, was blindsided by this news. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid told me he heard about it on Friday, the day before it happened. Wolf?
All right, Joe, thanks very much. Coming up, by the way, the top of the hour, I'll speak with that Republican, the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Saxby Chambliss. He'll join us live in our next hour. But let's talk about all of this. Joining us right now, Eli Lake, the senior national security correspondent for the Daily Beast. Also joining us, our national security analyst, the former CIA officer, Bob Baer. Eli, you've done some major reporting back in 2012. The top intelligence officials in the U.S. government, including the then defense secretary, the former CIA chief Leon Panetta, they thought this was a bad idea. What has changed?
Well, what's changed this time, at least according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, is that there are these... That's James Clapper.
He opposed it then.
He opposed it then, but there are a couple factors. One, there are guarantees now from the Emir of Qatar that these guys are going to be monitored, and he felt that those guarantees mitigated a lot of the risks and concerns that he had before. Second of all, what I've heard is that the view is that these guys, while very senior Taliban members and, of course, very important to the Haqqani network and the Taliban today, do not have the same kind of human networks that they did even a couple years ago, and that also mitigates the risk. And finally, there are going to be fewer American soldiers in Afghanistan within a year by the time they're allowed to travel back to Afghanistan.
There'll still be 10,000 there, almost 10,000 after 2015. Let's talk a little next year, 2015. Let's talk a little bit about that, Bob Baer, because Senator John McCain, he's very clear on this point. Let me play a clip for you.
They are Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Don't you understand that? Were you around? Yeah, like you said, you're an old man. You might remember that in 2001, Al-Qaeda found a haven with the Taliban. That's why we initially invaded Afghanistan. To somehow separate these people from Al-Qaeda is just damn foolishness.
So how dangerous do you think these 5 detainees are, Bob?
I don't think they're particularly dangerous. You know, as been said, they're out of date. They haven't been there in 10 years in Afghanistan. Our main enemy, the Haqqani network's in place. Their return, even if they were returned today to Afghanistan, it wouldn't change the fortunes on the battlefield. They're just not that important. They're senior, yes, but and I think Qatar will keep them for a year. We'll hold to the agreement. I think this is really a tempest in a teapot, frankly.
Let me pick up that thought because, Eli, you've done some reporting on this. One of those 5, a Taliban leader by the name of Mullah Mohammed Fazl, he's wanted by the United Nations for war crimes, accused of killing, literally massacring thousands of Afghan Shiites during the Taliban rule in the 1990s. He's an internationally wanted war criminal by the United Nations. As far as you know, has the U.S. ever released someone who's wanted by the United Nations for alleged war crimes?
I can't remember that. I mean, I also would say that there's an extraordinary point here, which is that the Taliban is considered by John McCain to be a terrorist organization, but by considering this to be an exchange of prisoners of war, it's almost like conferring a new status on the Taliban, which I think is an important point legalistically at this point.
What do you mean by that? Explain. Because the people that held Sergeant Bergdahl, the people that held Sergeant Bergdahl, they were the Haqqani network in Pakistan, what's remnants of the Taliban, if you will. Back in 2012, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, declared the Haqqani network to be a terrorist organization. He was being held by what the U.S. considers to be a terrorist organization.
That's true, and the Afghan Taliban, though, is not considered a terrorist organization. But I would just point out, and at this point I haven't done the reporting yet to say if these two things are connected, but according to the people who keep track of the drone statistics, there hasn't been a drone strike in Pakistan for almost 6 months, since December 25th, 2013. And I think in some ways this is part of a way for the Obama administration to try in their view to create the atmosphere for some sort of arrangement or agreement with the Taliban when the U.S. forces leave.
What do you make, Bob, of the life these 5 detainees are now going to have in Qatar? They're going to be there for the next year, but From what we're hearing, they'll be able to drive around, talk to folks, do whatever they want. The only thing they won't really be able to do is get out of Qatar, go back to Afghanistan or Pakistan, and they supposedly will be monitored by the Qatari government. What do you make of that?
Oh, I think they'll be very active politically. They'll be making contacts throughout the Gulf, raising money for the Taliban and the rest of it, but it'll be much more of a political level than an armed resistance. But I'd like to go back to Eli's point that the war is winding down. The drone strikes are tapering off. We are looking for some sort of settlement in Afghanistan we can live with, and that will, I guarantee you, include part of the Taliban. And I think we'd be very happy if we could get rid of the most militant, most radical ones and let them stay in Pakistan.
You believe, Eli, that this deal was not just a deal designed to free Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, but also a deal designed to try to improve relations with the Taliban? Is that what you're saying?
Well, when you talk to people about the history of these negotiations going back to 2011, it was always the understanding that this would set the tone or the atmosphere for a wider reconciliation. But I would say that the first reports from the Taliban, albeit their spokesman, is to say this would have no effect at all on a peace process. And
finally to you, Bob Baer, does it make any difference if he was a deserter, wasn't a deserter, in terms of the price that the U.S. had to pay to get him out?
Well, no, Wolf, let's be fair. This guy had psychological problems. To take a compass and a bottle of water, as the story goes, and wander off into the Taliban territory, the very vicious people, that he's lucky to have his head not cut off. He had psychological problems, so we're going to have to look at it in that context.
Bob Baer, thanks very much. Eli Lake, thanks to you as well. When we come back, Al-Qaeda's most dangerous affiliate releasing chilling new video of an interrogation of suspected U.S. informants just hours before their execution. And a new underwater recording of a major activity on the ocean floor. Could it hold the clue to finding Flight 370?